guys. Welcome back to another exciting episode on the show. I'm so excited to have you guys today. It's another episode of Control or Be Controlled, a podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And our guest today is Dan Weisleder. I hope I got that correctly.
Dude, you got it perfect. Yeah,
Okay, so Dan, I would like you to introduce yourself to my audience.
sure thing. So, first thing, funny thing is people always ask me if they're pronouncing my name correctly. The funny thing is, I am from Costa Rica. I speak Spanish, and I grew up pronouncing this as Weisleder pretty much as you did. The name, of course, is not not Spanish. I guess it's supposed to be pronounced Weisleder, but I don't speak German or Yiddish, so I mispronounced my own name. So don't feel bad if you do too. Um, but for the audience, I am a business value consultant. I live in Florida in the United States, and as I said, I was born and raised in Costa Rica. We didn't make the World Cup this year, but hopefully next one we will. And my role is really to help salespeople and business owners articulate the value of what they sell. In other words, most people are pretty good at explaining what their product or service is and what it does, but not so much at explaining why this needs to be done. So that's what I focus on.
Okay, Dan, thank you so much. So, just a little bit more on what you do so the audience can still have more insight. I think that introduction was very brief.
Mhm. Okay, you want me to go a little bit further?
Yes.
Sure. Okay. Um, do you want me to start over or just add to what I said?
Just add to what you said.
Okay. So just to add to that, what brings me to this role is I spent about 12 years as a business consultant. I was advising heads of IT and HR for a company called CEB, which was later acquired by Gartner. And my role over there was to help these functional leaders express not just the value of their functions, but operationalize why these functions were so important, and to think like business people, right? And so with that, I moved to the sales world, and an old colleague of mine pulled me into a company called ServiceNow, and he said, Dan, this whole thing about explaining the value of functions is really what we're trying to get to here. And so they brought me into the sales world as this role that I didn't know existed called business value consultant. And the role was exactly this, right? Is people were selling a platform, a software as a service, but they were not really articulating to their customers why this was worth buying. And so the result, not always, but sometimes, was the customer said, look, we really like the technology. We really like what it does, but we can't really find budget for it right now. And so my role became, all right, let me show you how your world is going to change and how much more money you're going to make or how much money you're going to save by automating. That's what ServiceNow did, right? By automating a bunch of these different processes. So I continued doing that. I moved to a couple of smaller companies, one about DevOps and the other one about cybersecurity. And they brought me in to basically build this capability for them. They said, we have this problem. We're selling complex products. And the people who use those products understand why they're so cool, but then they have to go find budget and they have a hard time. And so I built this capability for them. Today, I do this for myself. I am a business value consultant for hire. So I work with smaller companies that same thing. They say, look, we need to have this kind of capability. We're not going to hire somebody full time to do it, but we need some guidance. So I work with them. How's that?
Okay, thank you so much. So you often say that complex B2B sale is actually two sales.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So it's an interesting question, right? Because we are used to sales as one being one motion. But you're right. I claim it's not one motion; it's two separate ones. They go hand in hand. It's not that one goes before the other necessarily. But the first motion, and like I said, we're very used to this motion, is to sell the product. So what does that mean? Well, I come to you with a product and it's a technology or it's a gizmo or it's a service, right? And this product is going to work for you for Darlington. And you're going to look at it and think, oh, wow, this is fantastic. I really want it. That's one thing. And many times that's enough. But when we're dealing with complex sales, which means the people who have to pay for it, the people who have the budget for it, are not the ones who are going to use it. So what I mean is, imagine that you are the head of a department and you are shown a platform or an application that would work for you. But now you have to go to the head of finance or the CFO or the VP and say, hey, we want to pay, $10,000 or $100,000 or $1,000,000 for this thing. That's the other motion. The other motion is to explain to those people who have nothing to do with this product and are not interested in the process that you are solving. We have to explain to them why this is worth buying. So the two sales motions are really, one is, can the product do what we say it can do? And the other one is this actually worth doing? Right. So that's the other motion.
Okay, so why do so many deals die after everyone agrees the product is a great fit?
Yeah. So that's exactly what happens, right? So I've been working with technology products for a long time. And the way that this process works is you come and you do what they call a demo, right? A demo means I'm going to demonstrate to you how my product works. And you show all the features and you show all the gizmos and you show all the cool things that it can do. And the people in the demo, remember, these are the people who are going to use your software or your application or whatever. They get excited. They say, oh, yes, we want it. But the problem is now they have to go make this case internally. And here's the catch, is that the sales rep or the solutions consultant who is really good at explaining the product does not come along to that conversation. And so now the people who saw your demo and they want your product, they have to go and sell this internally. But what happens? Well, these people are not salespeople. They're not professional salesmen or women. And so we are not arming them to go make this case. And so when they get asked, yeah, okay, I get it. This is a cool thing, but we have 10 other things that we need to invest in. Why would we spend money on solving your problem or funding your project? And that's a tougher question to answer. And when we don't equip them to answer that question, what happens is the deal just withers away, right? They come back and they say, yeah, we're still trying to convince, Jane or Joe or whoever holds the budget. We're having another meeting next week. And so this thing starts to just delay indefinitely. And many times you don't even hear, no, we're not going to buy it. What you hear is, maybe later. And you just get silence and the deal never closes. So you never get a no, but you also don't get a yes. That's why deals die.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. So there are some great products that still lose to do nothing. Why is that the case? Why do great products still lose to do nothing?
Because exactly for that reason, right? It's not that they are choosing a competitor. If they choose a competitor, they're doing something. They're going to tell you. They're going to say, look, we absolutely need to solve the problem. So that question was answered. But we just don't think your product is the best one to solve it. So, yeah, sure, sometimes we lose to a competitor. But more often than not, or at least half the time, we lose to do nothing because we answer the first question, which is, why is this product so cool? But we didn't answer the second one, which is, why should anybody who is not involved in this problem actually invest in it? And so again, what happens is, it's not that they come back and say, we're not buying this, right? They just say, well, you know what? Maybe the current situation, the status quo, is just not so bad. We don't see a reason to invest thousands of dollars on this. And so that's what we call you lose to do nothing, or many times they say you lose to no decision. That's not a thing. No decision is not a thing, right? It was just decided not to make a decision, which basically means we're deciding not to do anything. That's actually what happens.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dan. So,
Yeah.
tell us the difference between selling a product and selling an investment, because most people think they are the same thing.
Yeah. Uh, so it's interesting, right? It almost requires a change of mindset. So again, the product sale is the straightforward motion that I was describing earlier, which basically means, look, you need a way to go from point A to point B. So I'm going to show you a car, or I'm going to show you a bike, or I'm going to show you a motorcycle, right? And it's going to solve your problem. So I'm going to show you the features. So, for example, if I bring a motorcycle, I'm going to show you, look, this is how it starts. Look how easy it is to steer, right? Here's how you brake. Look how cool it is that you can move, in between cars, which, by the way, you shouldn't do. It's very dangerous, but you could, right? So suddenly, the traffic jams don't impact you. And so I'm selling you this product. That's great. But imagine that now, I have to go and explain to my wife why I want to spend, I don't know, $10,000 in a motorcycle instead of just continuing to use public service, right? The bus, or, whatever it is I'm using right now. That is an investment. And so now I have to explain. So first of all, my wife would never allow me to buy a motorcycle because she thinks I would die. I probably would. But assuming that's not the problem, so now I have to explain, okay, so look, here's how much I'm spending right now in buses, and here's how much I'm spending in taxis, right? And here's how much time I'm wasting every day. And every hour that I am not at my job, I am losing this much money, right? And so now I'm not selling a motorcycle. I'm selling an investment. See, when I buy this motorcycle, I am actually, yes, I'm going to spend this much money, but over the course of a year or two, I already saved enough to pay for this, once or twice or three times over. That's the whole point. And when we sell platforms or products, especially complex products, again, we have to not just sell the product, but we have to sell the investment. And more importantly, we have to help the people who want our product to sell that investment. So that's really the difference between these two.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. So, tell us the biggest mistakes that salespeople make when they try to justify the return of investment.
Mm. There's a couple, but the two that I see the most, that I think are the most harmful ones. One, of course, is just to paint very rosy numbers, right? Which is understandable. You want to show that, again, if we're going to sell the investment, that this is a great investment, of course. But, humans, we rightfully tend to be skeptical of things that look too good to be true. So many times people plug things into a calculator, and the calculator shows a return on investment of, 2,000%. And people just come and say, look, it's a fantastic investment. Look at the return. And that just kills your credibility completely. By the way, sometimes it might even be true that the results are really great. But I always advise people, look, even if you could back this up, don't, right? It's always better to underpromise and say, look, your return is going to be, 120%, which is great, by the way, which is much more believable than 700%. And then it's great if you over deliver. That's perfect, right? So that's one thing, is the exaggeration of the numbers. The other one, which is much more common, is when we think that this is just a numbers game. And what I mean by that is I've seen many organizations develop what I mentioned before, which is an ROI calculator, right? So what does this do? But it asks you, for example, hey, how many people are going to use the platform? How much time they spend doing this thing, right? How much of this, how much are they spending on this other thing? And they turn this into an automated process. And they just say, okay, they tell their customer, if you just give me these 10 numbers, these 10 inputs, I can tell you what the ROI is. And that is poison for this kind of conversation because it needs to be a conversation, right? If we just throw out a number or a series of numbers, but we haven't even discussed if these are relevant to the customer, we are just, again, shooting ourselves in the foot. So I'm claiming benefits that I have never actually validated with you, my customer. So for example, if I say, hey, you are going to save 3 hours just commuting to your job. And then I say, well, I mean, I work remotely, so that's not really relevant for me. Well, that's something that you should have known, right, before you start plugging numbers into a calculator. Now, obviously, this is a dumb thing because this would have come up earlier, hopefully. But many times we don't do that. We don't engage in that conversation. And we just end up throwing out a number that doesn't really mean anything. And when we do that, again, we're just hurting our credibility. And the purpose of showing the investment now becomes an uphill battle to show that we're not just BSing everybody, that we're serious. So those are two very common ones that really hurt us in the end.
All right. So how accurate does a return of investment model really need to be?
You know, that's a great question. I think it's a matter of philosophy, but I mean, some people are very, very precision oriented. One of my kids has OCD, and everything needs to be exactly in the right place. But I don't believe that this exercise needs to be that precise. So what I mean by that is not, well, just plug in any number that you want. No, that's obviously not it. It needs to be credible and it needs to be reasonable, but it doesn't need to be precise. And so the example that I always give is, look, imagine that you are planning a trip to, my hometown, San Jose, Costa Rica. And you ask me, well, how should I pack? Right now, if you tell me I'm going in November, so, well, I don't know exactly what the temperature is going to be. I don't know if it's going to rain every day or at what time or not, right? That would be being precise, but I don't need to be that precise. All I need to tell you is, look, Darlington, November is the rainy season. It's ending, but it's still raining, right? So it's very likely that if you're going to be there 10 days, it's going to rain. Usually in the afternoon, it rains. It may be that a day or two you don't have any rain. It may be that a day or two you have rain the whole day. But so prepare for some rain. If you're going to be at the beach, it's going to be warm, right? It's going to be, between 30 and 35 degrees during the day and between 25 and 30 degrees at night. Maybe a little warmer, maybe a little colder. But you see what I'm doing there, right? I'm just helping you make the decision of how do I pack for this trip. Those ranges, I know enough to tell you those are likely to be the ranges. And that way you know how to pack, right? Bring a couple of bathing suits, bring sunscreen, whatever that may be. Now, that's the level of precision that we need for a business case. We're not trying to put a man on the moon, right? We're not trying to calculate precisely, gravitational curves and all that. Yeah, that needs to be very precise. You can't mess that up by a decimal point, because then a poor man is going to end up in the sun. But this is not that kind of exercise. All we're trying to answer is this a good investment? And it's a yes or no answer. So we just need to be directionally correct. We need to use reasonable estimates. We don't need to be precise.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. We don't need to be precise. So how do you quantify value when the customer doesn't have good data?
Sorry, I missed that. How do I quantify? Say that again.
Value. How do you quantify value when the customer doesn't have good data?
Yeah. So that's part of it, right? So, for example, I used to work for a cybersecurity company, right? And so one of the things, of course, that brings value to them is reducing the time that it takes for them to investigate a potential breach. So, the job of security operations team is sometimes very tedious, right? We all think it's super exciting. They're dealing with, cyber threats from Russia and China. And I mean, it's not usually that, but there's a lot of alerts that they need to investigate, and they end up being false alarms. Now, one of the things, of course, that a good cyber software does is it helps you filter many of these. Sometimes it even investigates things for you. But in order to quantify that, we need to know, well, how many of these things do you have, right? How many alerts do you get? And how much time you spend on investigating them? Well, it turns out that sometimes the information is confidential. They cannot tell us how many alerts they have. And sometimes, more often than not, they just don't track, right? They don't have a chronometer next to each analyst, and it starts when they start investigating and it stops when they stop investigating. They just don't know. So here's where this rational estimate needs to come from. So we could say, look, for a company your size, what we typically see is this many incidents on a given month. And it's between 1,000 and 2,000. Now, I'm going to ask you, Darlington, right? If you were my client, it's like, does that sound like it's about right for you? And you might tell me it's probably around that. Yes. Great. So you know what? Let's use a lower end. Let's use 1,200. Or you might tell me, you know what, Dan? I don't know, but it sounds a little high. Okay. Well, how about we use half of that? If we said 500, do you think that's about it? Yeah, that's probably around that. Good. Okay. So again, we don't know what the number is, but we need it to be close to reality. And this is close enough to reality. Now, how much time do your analysts spend investigating each alert? Yeah, that I don't know. Okay. Well, I've heard different numbers, right? Sometimes it's a couple of minutes. Sometimes it's hours. If I said it's 5 minutes per analyst per alert, do you think that makes sense? Because again, I can tell you what I think, but this is your reality. So you have to tell me if this matches or at least gets close to your reality or not. And if you say no, well, then what would make sense to you? And if you say it's 30 seconds, I might disagree. I might think you're being too generous. But that's your number. So if that's what you think is possible, let's put that number in. So that's how I normally approach it, right? It's not me telling you what I think should be in there. I have a perspective. But at the end of the day, it's what you think is reasonable and defensible. So that's how we do it when there is no good number to plug in there.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. So, if I'm a sales rep listening today, what's one thing I can do tomorrow that will help me close more deals?
Look, the one thing I would say is forget about the numbers, at least for now, right? Because many people, like I said before, think that this is a mathematical exercise, and they say, I don't like using numbers, or I didn't like math when I was in school, or whatever that is. So people love it, but this is not. This is an exercise in logic, right? And most people are smart. Most people can use logic. So that's it. It's just when you're selling something, whatever you're selling, the first question you need to answer is, what problem is this really going to solve for my customer? And then be curious, and then ask your customer, is this really a problem for you? How big a problem is it for you? And again, don't worry if they can't give you an exact number to put in there. It's fine. Just do some back of the napkins. Oh, so you're spending this many hours doing this. Well, if we could reduce it by 20% or 30%, would that be worth it to you, right? It's just asking these questions. And then you can play with the numbers. That's fine. That's what spreadsheets are for. But the very first thing is to engage in this logical conversation with your customer. And the more you do this, the more they are going to believe that your product is not just cool, but it's actually worth investing in. And that raises the chances that you're going to close more deals.
Okay, so here is my final question for you, Dan.
Yeah.
Is there a question you wish I would have asked you that I have not asked you?
Ooh, that is a great question. I don't know. I think one question would be, why? This is a question that I had, right, when I was first hired, is why isn't everybody doing this? Because it sounds very logical. It sounds very obvious. I thought when my friend called me and said, "Hey, I want to hire you for this role," I almost said no because I thought it was a ridiculous role. I said, "Look, surely everybody does this, or at least the vast majority of people." So if you ask me why isn't everybody doing this, um, my answer would be most people think they are. Most people think they do this, but the reality is they don't. So it's again, it's one thing to explain what you are selling, and it's one thing to sell it to the people who are going to use what you sell. It's a completely different thing to sell it to the people who have to approve it and are not going to use it. And again, if you are selling something where the user is the buyer, then great. Then all you need to do is convince that person. But if you're engaged in a more complex sale with different stakeholders where you have what we call a user and an economic buyer, then you need to really rethink this. This is not just something that happens organically. To some of us, it does. But to the 90% of us that have not been trained on this, it's not going to happen organically. Most salespeople have not been trained on this. And so it's something that we need to pay more attention to.
Okay, thank you so much. And this has been a very wonderful episode. Uh, I really appreciate you taking out your time to be here and speaking with me and my audience. So,
Yeah.
Dan, before you go, how can my audience connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Well, I have a website. It's hoffmandorf.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, just with my name, Daniel Weisleder, which hopefully they can see over here.
Okay, once again, Dan, thank you so much. This has been a very wonderful episode. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, and I hope my audience can pick one or two things from here and run with them. So, if this
All right.
episode is communicating to you, make sure to share it with someone out there who needs to hear this. Once again, I'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dan.
Thank you. Have a great one.
You too.